Our next speaker for today will be Mark Duiker, who is a senior developer advocate. He's going to talk to us about something very interesting, right? It is about building a fully featured, scalable chat app. So we have lots of chat apps, lot of people who are onboarding to seeing how they can sort of collaborate and socialize with each and everyone. So, Mark, looking forward for your session on this.
Hi, Mark. Welcome.
Thanks both. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about how to build a fully featured and scalable chat application with all of you. So my name is Mark Duiker. As already mentioned, I'm a senior developer advocate at Ably, where we enable developers to build real-time experiences. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for the last couple of years, especially focused on the serverless area. You might have heard about Azure Functions University. I'm also a big fan of pixel art. So I've also made this drawing that you see here, which is our Ably DevRel team. So what am I talking about today? First, a bit of high level about real-time in general. Then I'm going to talk about the chat application, what it is, why the DevRel team is building it, how are we building it. I'll be highlighting some advanced features that we're going to build. I'll definitely talk about the local development experience. And finally, I will show you how you can contribute to this project. Oh yes, there will definitely be a demo right after that. I'll explain some of the real-time communication aspects. So first we're going to talk about some real-time communication in general. So we see more and more organizations doing stuff on a data-driven way. So what does that mean? Well, they actually use data that they collect and base decisions on them, right? So they collect data and using that data for their decision-making. And I think it's great, right? It's always better to use real data than just use estimates or guesstimates and make important decisions on those. So a lot of these organizations are gathering loads and loads of data, and that's something that we call big data. So they usually have a data lake. That's one of the other speakers also mentioned this morning. You have a data lake, and we store all kinds of data there. And usually we do some analysis and reporting on top of that. Also, again, to support decision making. So that's already a great step that's being made by a lot of organizations. So the next step on top of that is we're actually going to use real-time data for decision making. So, and especially at a very large scale, that can be quite a challenging thing to do. If you have lots of data coming in and using that data in real time to make business decisions. So that's quite a nice challenge, and it's a very nice problem space to work in. So talking about real-time data, well, it's really everywhere where we look. So if you are doing some online course, you can probably chat with your teacher there or work together on your homework assignment. Well, we've all been doing quite a lot of video conferencing last couple of years, so I think we're all pros in that now. When you order something online and you get a notification that your delivery is on its way, you can track your package. Social networking is also a big player where you can take an image and post it online. People can respond to it or like it. That's also done in real time or near real time. Collaboration tools, for instance, Office 365, where you can collaboratively make a spreadsheet and do some calculations together. And gaming is a big one, especially MMOs, where you have big multiplayer games where you need to exchange a lot of information online. So it's really everywhere. A lot of these use cases I've mentioned involve some kind of a chat component, right? So in online education, but also in video conferencing, you can usually chat, and in these collaboration tools, you can usually chat as well. So a lot of our customers are building something with chat functionality. So, and that's what I'm going to focus in this session. So FFS Chat, it's a bit of a cheeky name, but in this case, it stands for Fully Featured Scalable Chat. So what is it? Well, in just a couple of words, it's a production-ready example or demo of a chat application. So let's first go to our demo. If you want, you can scan this QR code, and it is safe, I promise, or type in this link to go to the application. So this is it. It's running live. So here you can see what we've built so far. We can see the history of the chats. Some of my colleagues were so kind to sent some chat messages yesterday. So you can click on a profile to see a bit more information. Soon we'll be implementing direct messaging, so this doesn't work yet. So the work is still in progress. Of course, we can type something. We have multiple channels where we can communicate in. And I didn't show you yet, but you are actually required to create an account and to log in into this application. So that's also taken care of already. So this is what we're currently building. Okay, so why are we actually building this? And with we, I mean the DevRel team at Ably. Well, over the years, we have collected quite some documentation and code samples and GitHub repos that cover all kinds of aspects in the real-time space. And so we have written and demoed about connections and WebSockets and small chat applications and dealing with user presence and pops up patterns and all that kind of things. But the information was mostly geared towards beginners. So we have a lot of beginner content, but almost nothing for really advanced users. So we got a lot of requests from either customers or people from the community that they would like to see some bit more advanced level information that they could actually refer to as kind of reference architecture or a demo that they could use. So they wanted something advanced level, as real life as possible, that showed integrations with the cloud, that highlights multiple features of our APIs, and that's actually also scalable because a lot of our customers really demand a really high scale. They send millions of messages to many thousands of users. So also the scalability aspect was very important. So then our team decided to create a new demo, which is indeed much more than just an hello world sample, but really quite a big involved demo that to cover all of these aspects. So let's briefly touch on the domain objects and some of the features that will be implemented. So whenever you're dealing with chat, you always have these domain objects. So you can communicate in channels, you have the chat messages themselves, you have users and user profiles, and there are roles or groups. So all of these have some CRUD functionality. So you can create them, read them, update them, and delete them. And for the channels, users, and roles, we actually persist them in Cosmos DB. The messages themselves, they are sent via our platform, Ably. And for historical messages, we currently store them in blob storage. So this is, let's say, the basic functionality that whenever you build a chat application, you have this probably covered. But let's look at some of the more advanced features. So one of them is user presence. So there are quite some communication tools that shows you either a green circle when a user is online, or a red circle when they're offline, or when they're away, for instance. So that's also something that we're working on, and we want to have available in the chat application. Search is also something that we can work on. So we want to search in all channels, to search message content, also to search for users. We want to handle mentions and notifications. So when someone types @markduiker, then I will receive a notification in my application. Authentication and authorization, that's already implemented. So we have let's say a native login for FFS Chat, but we also have implemented Auth0. So we support 2 ways of signing. And we're also going to work on chat moderation. So we can add some words to a deny list. So people, so either messages are blocked immediately, or they're first need to be reviewed before they are then publicly available to the rest of the channel. So yeah, let's hope it's clear that we're not talking about a basic hello world chat application now. So how are we building this? Well, this is one of the first diagrams that were drawn, and this is our to-be architecture. So it's not where we are at the moment, but we're getting there. So you'll see some familiar icons. We see a lot of Cosmos DB. We see a lot of Azure Functions. We also see Azure Static Web Apps. We see some Azure Search and API management. So a lot of it is in place, but not everything yet. So I'll actually guide you through a simplified version of it. So our application is hosted in Azure Static Web Apps, a relatively new service in Azure, which I'm really enjoying a lot. You can use it for hosting all kinds of front ends, but also have some backend functionality in the form of Azure Functions, which is super useful. And I'm a big fan of Azure Functions. So in our case, we have a React front end. And the React front end is mostly communicating with the authentication part. And for real-time messaging, it's communicating with Ably. The backend is Azure Functions, so we are writing them in TypeScript. And that's mostly communicating with Cosmos DB and also a bit of blob storage. And that's used for profile images and a bit of historical messages. So this is the high-level overview of our application. These are the 4 most used components that we touch on, let's say, on a daily basis. So anything that deals in the real-time space. So we have communication between a React component and that then sends messages to Ably. And Ably is then responsible for delivering these messages to all of the other connected clients. So anything real-time, that's taken care of there. Anything that deals with management of channels or users or roles, that's handled then by Azure Functions, which are triggered from the React components. And that then calls to Cosmos DB. There are some instances where we actually trigger Azure Functions from Ably, and I'll come back to that a bit soon. So let's briefly talk about real-time versus near real-time. So I'm going to talk about distributing your application state, right? So as you're typing a chat message, you have that state on your local chat client, but that chat message is not yet delivered at all of the other people who are in the chat application. So as soon as you hit the enter button, that message will be sent and should arrive at the other connected clients. So that can be done in a couple of different ways. One way, and that's using Ably, it's using a publish subscribe pattern. So user 1 that types a message, it publishes a message, and other users are subscribed to the same channel. And Ably is then responsible for delivering that message to everyone who is subscribed to the channel. So that's a very common pattern. Lots of providers do this, and it's very useful if you're doing real-time communication. Another pattern, which is more near real-time, is I am posting some information, but I'm posting it to a central server, for instance, a central database, for instance, Cosmos DB. And instead of that central entity distributing the content, all of the other clients, all the users, need to go fetch that content. So that's quite a different way of distributing your application state. So now my clients are responsible for actually being up to date. And usually this is a bit slower because we don't exactly know when some content is delivered in Cosmos DB. I'm not talking about the change feed. So if you're using the Cosmos DB change feed, of course, then you can still trigger something else, for instance, an Azure function, and that function can probably use SignalR or something like Ably again to also trigger the client update. But I'm not talking about that yet. So that's not how we use it at the moment. So let's make this example a bit more specific. And let's say we have a channel that has 1,000 users in it. So if one user publishes a message that needs to be distributed to the other users, the 99 other users. So in total, 1,000 messages will be sent, right? So we're sending one, and that needs, and 999 one will be sent. But what if everyone in the channel will be sending a message at the same time? So then we have 1,000 publishers, and each of them need to receive the message from the other users. So in that case, it already results in 1 million messages. So by changing the scale a bit, that can result in quite an impact in the number of messages that are sent. So, and of course, when you're dealing with chat messages, you want it to be real time, right? You don't want to wait a couple of seconds before a message arrives. You want to receive a message as soon as possible. So that pops up is still a good idea. But what about a status change, perhaps? So maybe you go offline or online, or you change your status and saying, okay, I'm after lunch for an hour. Is it then still useful to broadcast that in real time, or is a near real time solution then maybe good enough? So let's have a look at alternative way to do this. So in this case, it's near real time. So we still have 1,000 users that send, let's say, a status update. They still push it to Ably, but on the Ably side, we can configure a webhook that triggers an Azure function. And that Azure function then posts the state information to Cosmos DB. So now Cosmos DB has that new updated state, but the other clients do not know about it yet. So they need to actually get that information. But instead of now needing a million of messages, we now only have a couple of thousand operations or messages to get to that distributed state. So yeah, those two solutions are completely different. They're not really comparable, but it's important to realize that you can solve the same problem in different ways, and some might have some benefits, and some consequences. So it's important to know about these differences. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that always look at your application architecture under different perspectives. So there are some well-known perspectives, such as look at it with the security and look at it via scalability and performance. Look at it using availability and resilience. Look at it from an evolution standpoint. And so how well easily can your application undergo any change, so it doesn't fall down easily. And all of these perspectives have an impact on cost as well. So the same is true for using PubSub for everything, for a real-time solution, or using a near real-time solution. So sometimes it's a bit of a trade-off between functionality, real-time versus near real-time, which definitely is an impact on cost. One of the very nice things is you can definitely do quite a decent estimation of your costs, especially when it comes to Cosmos DB. So Cosmos DB has an online capacity calculator, and that allows you to make some pretty good estimations on how much you'll spend every month regarding your Cosmos DB storage. So you can specify which API you're using, the number of regions, and what is very nice, you can actually specify the workload that you're expecting. So you can specify how much storage you'll be using, and then even how much CRUD operations you're doing. So it really takes some time to analyze this, what your expected workload is, and then to translate that into numbers you can use in the system. But I really recommend everyone to do this, because you don't want to be surprised after a couple of months and see that you have a very high bill because your application is maybe very successful. A few words about local development. So I think having a good local development and a very quick inner development loop is very important when you're either using some open source project or you're just onboarding on a new team, because you don't want to spend days and days setting up your local environment. So since we are using Azure Static Web Apps, there's this very, very nice CLI tool, Azure Static Web Apps CLI, that you can use to emulate your whole Azure Static Web Apps environment. So you can run it completely locally on one endpoint. So you have this one endpoint available, and behind that single endpoint, you can have your static content being served, and you have your Azure Functions local runtime running, and you can even emulate your authentication and authorization. So this is really ideal for debugging either your front end or your Azure Functions backend. So the CLI tool is, I love it. It's really a time saver. If you want to read more about it, I definitely recommend this blog post from Anthony Chu introducing the Azure Static Web Apps CLI. Another tool which I think is great is another emulator. It's the Azure Cosmos DB emulator. Maybe you've seen Sean Wildermuth's session in yesterday's Americas track, because he had a session dedicated to the Cosmos DB emulator. So if you haven't seen that, then definitely watch that back. Again, it's a tool you install locally, and when you run it, it opens up a browser where you see this. And this is very similar to what you see in a portal, because in this slide, this is what is actually there in the portal. So this is the real Cosmos DB, but this is the emulator view, which is very much the same. So you can see which database you have. You can create and manage your database and collections here. You can create new items, you can read items. And of course, you can. This also allows you to connect your local application to this emulator. So again, this is really nice for a very nicely focused inner developer loop. The final thing I want to say about local development is code spaces. So that's another thing which is relatively new. So code spaces are developer virtual machines hosted in the cloud, and this one are hosted by GitHub. But they're really ideal if you want to get up and running quickly with a new GitHub repo, for instance, especially if your own machine maybe is not really powerful, or maybe you're not allowed to install any tooling, for instance, on it. Then this is really ideal. So there are two ways how you can use it. You can either use it completely from the browser, so you can even just run it just from a tablet. So it starts up a new VM, and it loads your GitHub repo there. You can even specify some commands that you want to initialize in case you want to install some additional tooling. So this again is very nice for you if you want to get up and running quickly with a GitHub repo. The other way how you can run this is actually you can still use your local machine and open up Visual Studio Code, but then you can connect to one of these remote VMs. So then it's a bit of the best of both worlds. So you can still use your local VS Code, but you're connecting to a remote VM that holds your code, and you can do development and build environments there. So if you want, this is our GitHub repo, fully featured scalable chat app in Ably Labs. So if you hit the code button and you see local first, you can clone it. But there's also a code space tab, so you can create a code space, and then you have the entire GitHub repo running in a VM. Final point, how you can contribute. So I already shown you this page. So this is our GitHub repo. We are developing this completely out in the open, licensed under a Apache license. So you're completely free to take this and run with it, make it your own. That's totally fine. The README is quite extensive. So if you don't have code spaces or don't want to use it, we have a very extensive README that will describe in detail what are the prerequisites, how should you install everything, how to get everything running. It describes all of the components that we've built so far. So I think this will definitely help you if you want to have a look and either just test it yourself or help us contribute. So this is the QR code for the GitHub repo. You also see the full URL there. I'm very curious about your opinion, so definitely let us know. And feel free to help us out. So we'll soon start working on the chat moderation tool. We'll be working on private messaging. We'll be implementing search, media previews in messages. So if that sparks your interest, please do let me know. And if you have new ideas of other features we could implement, please contact us or create a GitHub issue in the repo. If there's any questions, I'll be hanging around here in the chat. You can also approach me on Twitter @MarkDuiker. And if you want to talk more about the real-time space, feel free to join the Discord if you want. And thanks, everyone.
Hey, Mark. This was a very interesting session. I think everybody is familiar in some way or the other because we use a lot of chat applications.
Yes.
I had one question. So if there is a website developer who is starting new and he wants to provide some type of customer service or whatever, right? Enable some type of chat with the user, either for recommendations or to answer the questions what the user may have before he buys a product. Can they just integrate your module, the FFS Chat module, directly into their application? Is it something that is easy?
Well, this is definitely, let's say, you can definitely take this and integrate it in something else, but this is it's more designed like a standalone chat application. So it's more intended like a fully full chat
peer-to-peer.
So it's not a small chat component that you implement in an existing website to quickly talk with customer support, for instance. Because those usually don't need chat history or presence information or things like that. So what you heard from our customers is really that they want some next level example of a chat application. And for most of the, let's say, quick questions and answers or customer support chats, there are quite some existing components already out there, which you can easily drop into your website and straight go up and use it. So this is more like a bigger standalone web application for it.
Right. I also had another question on the security aspects, right? So you mentioned you are talking about roles, creating the roles, assigning certain permissions, and then doing authentication and authorization, right?
Yeah.
So are you using any of the Cosmos DB components that is natively available, or are you planning to handle this in an external source or through the application itself?
Most of it. Well, the authentication is either done internally, where we create our own users, which are then also coupled to API keys on the Ably side, or we do it via Auth0, so you can bring your own provider there. To a certain extent, it integrates, of course, also with the capabilities you have in Cosmos DB. But we're not using all of the native Cosmos DB capabilities regarding to roles there. No. That's definitely a good point, so we can look into more as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I think this was amazing. You touched upon the concept of real time and near real time. And you also explained it very lucidly, right? Like how a message needs to be real time, whereas a status update can be near real time, and how you are storing the different types of data in different systems, right? Like the chat history and maybe the profile picture and all that, you are keeping it in blob storage because it can take some time and also occupies more space. There is not real like immediate need for something like that. You can always fetch it later.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you explained very nicely on what is real time and what type of data can reside in real time. So I think this was exciting, and hopefully more people can join the bandwagon and contribute towards this. Looking forward for a more fully featured app in the near future.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I really loved it. I think I learned to just like describing like the whole architecture of, the whole objects and everything. I never put so much thought into like when you're designing a chat app. So with all that, sequence of how it goes, I was like, oh, wow, okay, it's a lot. But
exactly. Cool. Yeah, usually when you see chat app, it's just like any other chat app, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the background you might not see directly. So
nice. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Mark.